Welcome to the Intuitive Websites Internet Marketing Podcast, bringing you the country's top podcast on the subject of internet marketing. Folks, welcome back. I'm your host, Glenn Thayer. I'm with Thomas Young, the CEO of Intuitive Websites, and today we're going to discuss Google News and PR on the web. One of our clients, Brett from Hard to Find Items, had requested we talk about Google News and online PR as a way to really drive traffic to the website. So I guess if we really go down, everybody knows what Google is, but Tom, maybe you can speak to what is Google News.
Yeah, well, the best way to find out is to actually visit the site, do a search in Google for Google News, or just click on the link News there at Google. And you'll see Google News is a huge portal, basically, that is all news related, but it is current to the second. I mean, this is, the idea of having to wait for your newspaper, like in the old days, to get the news, or even wait for the evening news. No, Google News is changing all that. If it's news and it's happening, it's out there immediately. Now, the other part of Google News, which is kind of amazing, is that it's huge. I mean, anything that's news can be on Google News, which then means for our listeners, do you have something that's news? It could be on Google News. And the reason that's important is because what appears on Google News can be customized for all the people visiting Google News. So, for example, Hard to Find Items. Hardtofinditems.com is a very interesting website. It's just what it says. It's these very interesting items that people are always looking for, but they can't find them. And once they find them, they say, wow, that's where that is. That's great. I can use this to, clean my hardwood floors, whatever that item does. Well, for Brett, this is great stuff because all of those items are newsworthy because they're unique, they're relevant, and they have some characteristics that are very, very different from the typical off-the-shelf item. So getting information, or in this case, news about those items distributed is kind of what we're going to talk about in this podcast, is to be the objective for Hard to Find Items and our other client websites and listeners. But starting with Google News, it can really be seen as one of the key players in how all this comes together. And Google News is also just a real good example of news in general on the web. And as usual, Google kind of leads the way. They have a lot of things you can do within Google to get news. In fact, you can set up a feed in Google, and on any topic that you choose, you'll get immediate information the minute that feed is released. So what that does for our clients then is it enables your content and your news to be found, because all of this stuff in the news on the web is very niche focused. When I grew up, you read the newspaper, you got a magazine, or you watched the news on TV. And in fact, a story I heard recently kind of blew my mind. If you remember the Olympic hockey team that won the gold medal in 1980, that game was not live on TV. Before the game was over, on TV, as we were watching, the game was already over. Could you imagine in today's world? I mean, it would have been ridiculous because everyone would have known the result thanks to websites like Google News. But back then, people had no idea. They sat there and they watched their TV, and maybe a few phone calls were made by people that were actually at the game, but that was about it. So that's what news is like now. I mean, it's just it's instant, it's niched, it's focused, it's available to everybody. And then what Google is doing because of Google News and the power of Google is they're starting to index all the news that's submitted. So anytime you write content that's news-focused content, it's submitted or it's indexed by Google. And in fact, you can submit to Google News directly, but Google will index it as news. And so even if you're Twittering, or you have a blog, or you're doing a podcast, or whatever, all that stuff is indexed at news. So it's another way to get more exposure in Google and more traffic to your website.
And that's an important point you bring up, is as far as like Twitter, like social media, and Twitter is cataloged and indexed. So when people Twitter and do a Twitter post on your company or something about you, it shows up. And that brings me to another segment, is what about Google Alerts? Because obviously when we're talking about PR, we're also talking about brand management. And from that standpoint, it's setting up a Google Alert, being able to set up a Google Alert that says, hey, somebody's talking about you or your company.
Yes, and absolutely.
It could be mentioned in a blog post. It could be mentioned in places that you would never look, but they show up because Google alerts every day, and the inbox says, "Hey, somebody's talking about you over here."
Yeah, it's massive networking, and it's massive B2B networking, because the bottom line is people on the web are looking for your products and services. In the case of hard to find items, they're looking for that thing that does the thing they want it to do. They can't find it anywhere else. And so you want to be found in these news websites. And in fact, Google also has what's called Fast Flip, which allows you to set up your favorite news sources all on one Google page. So you can, and in fact, a lot of these websites, you can see the headlines right there on the site and then click to what's important to you. So the key thing, I mean, as we talk about this is to really know the difference between news and other content. And because as you start to put a strategy together to do web PR, it has to really be news. It can't be how-to articles, about us articles, or general information. So define news. News has to be something that's relevant, something that's important that people need to know about. News is usually has a date associated with it. So it's an event that's coming or going. It's a new thing. It's a new product. It's a new service that's been released. It's what people are saying, what people are doing. That's all news. Most content on websites isn't really news. Most content on website has to do with about the company, about the products, about the services. Even a lot of our content on web marketing is just educational, knowledge-based content. News is not that. News is different.
News is when Intuitive Websites is honored with Web Marketing Company of the Year.
Right, or we do a webinar, we put a seminar on, or I'm speaking in an event, or we add a new staff member, or we discover something new or different. That's news. So as you start thinking about how am I going to do PR online, it's almost like the same. We answer this question the same way every time. Is first start with your strategy. Okay, what is overall your content distribution strategy? And you can break content distribution into two areas. One area would be news, which we just defined. And the second area for content distribution would be general content that could be how-to content or, 10 tips to a better website and things like that. But it's important to know the difference, because if you want to have a PR strategy and be effective, you can't have how-to content in there. It'll get kicked out. So that once you have the strategy in place and you've got your distribution of your content lined up, then you're going to start with distributing your news articles or your news PR. And one of the things we see is the biggest challenge with our clients is, well, who's going to write that stuff?
That's always the biggest thing. It's the who.
And the typical web marketer or CEO says, "Oh, I don't have time to write articles about my business." Well, the good news is there's companies out there that can help you do that. We offer that as a service. There's a site called Brafton.com that offers that as a service. We'll put several website links on our blog, so you can go and visit these sites.
Well, what's a quick way that somebody can get a quick piece of news or press release out there if they don't have that time? I mean, what's something they go, I don't have the time to do it myself. I don't have the money to do it, but it comes down to them realizing they have to do it themselves. What's a quick way to just bang something out that might be a paragraph or two paragraphs that they can send out, so at least here's something newsworthy and it's done and it's out there, as opposed to waiting for somebody to do it?
Well, one of the interesting things about the web is just how many great resources are out there that are free. And they're free, but there's going to be some ads on the website. There might even be ads on your press release, but that's okay. It's free to do this, so that's the price you pay for that. And we have actually a list of PR websites with their we put the Alexia rank up there.
And what is Alexia for those that don't know what Alexia is?
Alexia's true. We got to what Alexia is basically the popularity of the website in the web in general. And some of these free PR websites have Alexa ratings, under 5,000, under 2,000, which means it's getting a lot of traffic on this website. So basically, you set up an account with these free sites, and you submit your content to the website. And then there are also paid options as well. But depending on what you're doing, you have different levels then of service. And a basic level of service is, you send them a keyword-rich for the search engines, PR release. That release then gets posted on a website that gets amazing traffic. And if someone's searching for that topic, they'll end up on your release, and they'll have a link back to your site or an email to reach you. That's kind of the basic level of free services for these websites. The higher level service would be a paid service where you pay maybe a couple $100 a year. It's actually pretty inexpensive. And then you could submit it to a site like PR.com that has huge traffic. For a little bit more money, then PR.com or PRWeb.com can then distribute those press releases to dozens, maybe hundreds of news-focused websites. And if the strategy is done right, you're distributing your content to the website that's most relevant to that type of content. And then that has an opportunity there for lots of additional traffic. And it all works if you have great news. The better the news is, and the more exciting it is to your marketplace, the more the results you're going to see.
Well, now, and since we're still talking about being able to take advantage of Google News, speaking about that, we'll take it to the next level. There's also Haro, Help a Reporter Out, Haro.
Okay.
And that, and it's helpareporter.com. And at helpareporter.com or Help a Reporter Out, it's a way that you have reporters that are looking for experts in certain areas so they can write articles.
Yeah, I think that we've talked about content for the web in general, and every podcast we've done about content, we deal with this issue of who's going to do it. I don't have time, but I know it. But then I'm not a writer, but, how are we going to get this done? Well, you've got to reach out and find a writer. The thing with writers is a couple things. One is find somebody who knows how to write for the web, succinct, briefly, to the point. And then find someone that can interview you to pull that information from you and then put it into a relevant format. And when you're writing PR for the web, it can be more of the standard news type copy, which, if you go back to your Journalism 101, starts with the very basic facts first, building down to more detail, totally without judgment. You're just reporting on the facts. That's one of the things I think that could be an advantage for companies if they focus on the facts, the attributes, and the benefits of what's happening in the news, and not judgment or opinion. That's very different. And in today's media, we have a big cross between those two things where the line gets blurred between opinion and judgment and actually real news. Keep your press releases focused on the news, because your smart readers will appreciate that and they're more likely to visit your site. But yeah, you've got to find someone to write this content, and more than likely that person will not be on your team. So we'll put a link to Help a Reporter Out and the other website I mentioned earlier, Brafton.com, so that you can find some resources. And we're also a resource as well, intuitivewebsites.com.
Well, as all of our listeners know, we end each of our podcasts with an action item. So, Tom, what are this podcast's action items for our listeners?
Well, I'm going to kind of a summary of what we just talked about. Step one would be to develop a content strategy for all your content, but in this case, for news and PR about your company or your website. Review the major PR sites. We're going to have a list of them there, paid and free, and then also sites where you can go and get content done. Find out which one's best for you. We'll highlight several of them, and based on the ranking and so forth, you can find a good one. And then set up an account with that site and move forward by distributing your content through them. Make sure you find someone that's going to write the content, probably an external person or consultant, but maybe someone on site can do this. And then track the results. Monitor your search engine rankings based on those articles and the traffic coming from those articles. And then track the conversions back to press releases. So if you use Google Analytics, like we've recommended many times, you can track a conversion back to the path of entry. It would be real interesting to see how many people come in from your press release and then convert. Now, one other thing about this whole concept of press releasing is there's no quick fix to doing this. You're not going to submit a press release and have 10 sales the next day. And it needs to be a methodical part of what you do. So over the course of a year or two, you might have dozens of press releases out there. The good thing the good high or the good upside of this, and it could happen for you, is that you might hit a really hot topic. And if you've got a hot topic that's out there and it gets featured in something like Google News, it could do very well for your website. So take this seriously, make it part of your strategy, and think about the long term, and I think you'll see some success with it.
Well, folks, thanks for joining us again for the Intuitive Websites Internet Marketing Podcast. We hope that you can join us on the next one. Thanks so much, Tom.
Thank you.
This has been an Intuitive Websites Internet Marketing Podcast. For more information and to see all the available podcasts and much more, visit intuitiveblog.com.